Well, good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Happy Monday. Jonathan Turner alongside Nathan Wangler. It's Inside the Game, and I'm extremely hopeful that I won't freeze here this morning.
That's great. If you do, I just hope you freeze at the perfect moment.
You know,
Because
I
it made for a good outro the last time. So,
it did. You made it poke fun. I feel like our TikToks are getting better and better and better each and every day. So, but
you like that Vigil AI, don't you? That's a cool feature. I discovered that last year, and I did a couple of dub overs where I put myself over like certain like highlights, like sports highlights, and so we would play that on our broadcast during the minor league season, and it was actually very, very entertaining. I inserted myself in some very important moments in Detroit Tigers history, and so I was going through when that happened. I was like, man, I'm like, because you mentioned destroying, your equipment and in your office and your computer because you were so mad at them like freezing up all the time. And so you're like, you're talking about that, and I'm like, what movie does this remind me of? There's a movie out there, and then I'm like, yes,
yeah,
yes,
it was definitely Office Space.
Office
Great movie,
Space,
by
where
the
they
way. I mean,
where they
what
destroy
a
the
great
printer.
it's a great movie. It really
Yeah.
is.
I'm like, it has to be. So that was funny.
So, couple things. Last week we had a viewer who was like, "A soccer podcast? You're wearing football stuff?" So, it, uh, r- I can't. Up. How do I get up there?
Yeah.
All right. So
Yeah.
I'm wearing soccer stuff now. So that came in on Friday. I got a lot of stuff. Matter of fact, here got a nice, nice USA
Ooh.
hat right there. Okay.
Camera hat? Nice.
I did go out and get some soccer stuff here for
Alright.
me to wear while on the air doing soccer podcasts. But hey, if you are a soccer fan and you want to buy us some gear and send us our way, I'm not going to stop you. I think Nathan, you are an extra large.
Yes.
All right. And
Yeah.
I am a large, and I am not in charge, but I am a large. So, but anyways, yeah. So I went on and bought that. I got a number of things. So over the course of the next couple of days, I'll be wearing some new Team USA stuff. I did buy a She Believes T-shirt too, Team USA. So I went and got some of that merch as well. So yeah. But anyways, it is Monday. And each and every week, we dive into this. It's going to be a different week than normal for us here at NSN and Inside the Game. And Nathan, I'm going to have you explain that because this is you. This is your thing. So
Yeah. Well, I had an opportunity. So last year, I don't do a lot of public address announcing. It's not really my thing. I actually try to stay away from it as much as I can, just simply because it's interesting. People think whenever I tell them, I'm the broadcaster, they don't really know initially, a lot of them don't, how to separate public address and play-by-play. They just think it's kind of the same thing. So they always assume that I'm the big voice guy at the stadium. And I'm like, no, I'm one of the big voice guys, but I'm the guy, you hear in the bathroom or you hear over the, at the concession stand. They don't play the play-by-play in the bathroom at Comerica. I know they do. The radio broadcast.
I don't know.
You should listen in.
I don't
Next
know if
time
I
you go
pay
to the
attention
bathroom.
over
You'll hear
all
Dan
the other.
Dickerson in your ear while you're going. You will, I promise. But they assume I'm the guy talking about like how there's like, this concession stand or like, so and so you left your car on. Jimmy, what's up? But that's not me. I am the play-by-play guy. But that doesn't mean every now and again I won't step out and do some public address announcing because there are good opportunities and there are, open stuff. So last year I did the KCAC Conference Championship meet. Peter, what's going on? And Jimmy to me. The boys' room at the last minute. So I did that for that conference championship last year. It was a swim championship. It was 3 days. I thought it went well. I mean, I did my best, but they're like, wow, big voice guy. You did really well. So we want you to come back and do it again next year. So I will be down in South Bend for Wednesday through Saturday. I will be doing the NAIA national tournament or national championship swim competition. So I'll be doing public address announcing for that for those days. So JT will have a guest on the show. We'll still be bringing you obviously all the content that you expect to see day by day and posting and getting you guys involved and doing some different stuff. But I'll be interested to see what it's like. I mean, I think it's like 64 different total schools that are represented or something crazy along those lines. So it's going to be a big event. I know it's huge for the little town that I'm going to in northern Indiana and Elkhart. I mean, I know they're expecting probably a big business boom, and to just bring all that traffic to that area, I think is really important for them too, because I know they're kind of a part of that South Bend market, but they're a really small part of that South Bend market, Bethel University and the NAIA, because typically when you think about that area, it's Notre Dame, it's Holy Cross, it's, that's kind of the epicenter, but they're going to bring a lot of traffic down there, and it's going to help them. It's going to help that city out a lot. And I know they even got the mayor involved in a big banquet that they're having. So this tournament itself is huge. So yeah, it was a year ago that I kind of committed to this, and although it's not my favorite thing to do, I think it's nice to feel uncomfortable every now and again. I think it's nice to branch out and do different things, and especially if they're going to take care of you, may as well. So I think it's an exciting opportunity, but it's going to be a busy week for me. Tonight I got a conference championship basketball game at our home floor over at CU. So, which is cool because that doesn't really come around a whole lot. And I guess that's something else I realized about, this career, JT, is like you can call a lot of games. You can go a long time without calling championship games. It doesn't happen every day. And I myself have not had a championship-like scenario since 2020. It's been a while. So it's been about 5 years since I've been in the position to make a championship-style call, at least with the school sports that I do. So that'll be really cool. And it's two teams. One of them's a Cinderella, a 7th seed that made it to the end. And one of them, was kind of building up to this for 7 years. So there's a lot of storylines there. So all of this to be said, come Saturday, vocally, I will be fried. But, it'll be a great week. And, it's kind of that transition from everything's cold and snowy and icy to now everything's starting to warm up and everything's starting to happen. So we're kind of transitioning into the really good part of the year, especially for people who do what I do. So it'll be a fun experience.
No, I would expect it to be. So I typically call obviously a lot of different sports at Oakland. We've talked about that, and I've done the women all year round. I did every home women's basketball game this season. That's the first time I've actually done every women's basketball game. I think last year I did probably 85% of them, but this year I did large. I did all of them, which is great. And had the women won on Saturday, they would have actually been hosting a game tomorrow night in a doubleheader with the men's basketball team, who finished 6th in the Horizon League, and they are so they finished 6th, and they're hosting now tomorrow Green Bay Phoenix and Doug Gottlieb. And so throughout the season, the men's season, Neil Arul, who is our director of broadcasting in Oakland, who does the men's basketball and really any other sport, he gets first dibs because he's the director of broadcasting. He is simulcast radio call as well as the ESPN Plus call as part of their contract with the radio station. Well, the Rising does not allow that to happen during the playoffs, during the tournament. So tomorrow night, I will be doing the radio call on 1270. The Odyssey, and
you're doing some radio,
right?
So for basketball, let's go. Nice.
So it's gonna be a little different. Calling the radio is completely different than calling an ESPN broadcast. You don't have to do as much in a
time and score, broadcast.
Man. Huh?
You just say time and score every other possession. You're good to go.
Yep. So, but yeah. So so tomorrow, and locators are really important on the radio as well, right? Locating a player, where the ball is, where it's hitting. There are some differences and nuances to calling the radio. But tomorrow will be my second time calling a radio call. Last year, I did it against Eastern Michigan.
Was that your buzzer beater game last year?
Sorry.
Was that your buzzer beater game that you had last year? Was that the radio one, or was that a different one?
No, they beat Eastern pretty handily last year. At Eastern, I had a chance to go down to Eastern EMU and be in that stadium. It's a pretty cool setup. down there.
They
But
got like a blacktop style too, don't they?
no, I don't think
Something?
so. I don't
No?
think so. But I mean, again, hey,
Maybe I'm thinking of football. I think they have like a charcoal style field or something. I don't know. But
no, again, I don't know. And again, it's called the George Gervin Game Above Center. That's what it's called. It doesn't look. Maybe it's a little. It's not. I don't know. Maybe they call it the blacktop. I don't know, man. Everybody is different with how they do things.
right.
But you know, it's just that's gonna be the cool part of what we do here.
And
I
nothing
agree
beats
tomorrow.
postseason play too.
Huh?
I mean, it's just like, the regular season's fun. The regular season's one thing, but I even recognized it we played Rochester Christian to open up the tournament, and that was someone that you guys played too, because I thought they played you guys on homecoming this year. I thought that was like a big thing, like they hosted you guys, or I forget how that worked. And obviously you beat them, but I know they've had some close matchups with you guys in the past, but yeah, I mean they play at a breakneck speed, and once you get into the postseason, it's just that much faster, and it's kind of fun. Yeah, it makes it more difficult for me, but there's a new energy in the building when you talk about postseason play. So, like I said, getting the opportunity to call a championship won't be too bad.
I thought it'd be kind of cool. We talk about inside the game. This is an inside look of what our upcoming productions look like, and I thought it'd be kind of cool to kind of show this a little bit. This morning. Oops, a little wide there. What this looks like for us. And kind of how we are how we're kind of growing. And while the current spreadsheet that we use, Nathan, to do all these things, we'll be moving into our back end CRM. But this is how we are assigning games and assigning assignments. And if you can tell here, we have this weekend, or not this weekend, but I think we have a total of 20 broadcasts this week that we are responsible for here on our platform. You can see here, it shows you just the different things. But what are you looking at? So the network is where the game is going, right? Where is it going to be, the destination, right? And then placement is what we as our Roku placement. So where the game might be found on Roku. Our station is where the game will be produced from. We have multiple stations inside of our studios. Right now, we have the capacity to handle 3 games at a time. At the end of this week, we'll be at the ability to handle 10. And then at the end of next week, we'll be able to handle 25 with an additional 25 kind of waiting in the background. So we're going from 3 to 10 to 25 in the next 14 days. Producing, are we producing these? So obviously, in most scenarios, the case is yes. Then there's the commentary side. Are we providing commentary? If we're providing commentary, that's obviously a yes. These ports are how we distinguish where the feeds are coming in from. So that's just kind of give you an idea. You have the date of the game, the time of the game, the league, and or the show, who's home, who's away, and that just kind of shows you kind of like the ins and outs of how we look at our games on a week by week basis. And this is this week's schedule. We will jump from 20 broadcasts this week to roughly 30 broadcasts next week. And if you notice, most of these broadcasts happen on Saturdays and Sundays. So kind of give you an idea of how we do things here.
Yeah, and it only continues to grow too. And what's crazy is you were talking to me the other day about just how many games we're going to have. So like being able to kind of organize it like that is crazy. So stream it. You're talking about 25 games simultaneously then.
Yeah, so right now we have the ability to handle 3 at the exact same time. Now we've been able to actually do 5 and 6 through other ways, but right now we have the capacity to handle 3 direct productions at the exact same moment. And then we'll be at 10 here in the next 7 days. So we'll be able to handle 10 over the next 7 days.
Yeah. Well, what's nuts to me is looking at all the different locations too. I mean, it's crazy. Baltimore, St. Louis, we'll be in Harrisburg, and a lot of these are MASL games, especially as we get towards the end of the season, especially at the end there. So a couple in Harrisburg, Milwaukee. You got Tacoma all the way out on the West Coast. You got Kansas City. St. Louis, Texas, even Chihuahua, Mexico. So that's the one I'll be doing. I think that's the one I'm doing, right?
It's in 2 weeks, so you'll be on the
2 weeks. Oh, okay. All right. So the Savage game on the 14th. So that will be in Chihuahua. It's interesting. I was actually telling someone about that because they were asking obviously what the upcoming schedule looks like, and I'm like, well, I'll be doing this game, but it's in Mexico. And obviously, we're the English only version for that. Neil Rule did it the first time around. Obviously, I'll be doing it now, but it's kind of funny to think about it that way because I'm kind of the minority in this situation, whereas as opposed to having like a Spanish broadcast for an English game, it's the other way around. So it'll be interesting. But like I said, like the Chihuahua Savage are for real, as JT is showing you right now. And, one of the biggest reasons is because look at that home record. I think, they're one of only 3 teams that are completely unblemished at home.
I think they're one of 4 teams.
One of 4 teams. Yeah, KC tied.
But again, excuse me. They're a very good team. Obviously, you can tell that there are 3 teams that have clinched the playoff spot already: Chihuahua, Kansas City, and San Diego. Now, the last time we did a Savage game, it was San Diego. They were actually in second place. So this second time around, it's Chihuahua Savage versus Kansas City. That game, first versus second, right? And again, not many points separate these 3 teams, right? You're talking about 7 points is what separates these 3 teams. So if Kansas City could go in there and win here on Friday, they would be only, 2 points away from being in that first spot. So very, very, again, this whole thing is pretty close. We actually saw, I think at one point we saw a significant gap between Chihuahua and the rest of the league, but not anymore. And
thing you got to be concerned about is the teams that start to gel at the perfect right time. And what I mean by that is gel at the end of the season. And I don't think that there is another team in the MASL that has done that quite to the extent of Kansas City. I realize that streak that they have, and they kind of where the streaks are. They've lost 1 in a row. But that snapped, I believe, a streak of what was 7 straight wins for that squad. So, yeah, there was not a little bit of a gap. I mean, San Diego, and I think San Diego's right in front of them comfortably. I think it was them and Chihuahua at the top that were kind of.
And if Kansas City had won yesterday, right? Kansas City played yesterday. I think they were out at Milwaukee. But had they won yesterday, they would be in that. They'd be in that 40. They could have a win on Saturday or Friday would put them in first place. Right. Again, top 8 will go. Top 8 will go to the playoffs. Those games will be taking place in San Diego, actually April the 4th, I think, through the 6th. So that's when those games will take place. But that just kind of gives you an idea, a rundown of what's going on currently. We had a chance this weekend to call 2 MASL games, MASL 2 and MASL 3. Right. That's what we called here on Saturday and Sunday. Yesterday's, I think, final score of the MASL 3 game that we did. I just want to make sure I don't want to say it wrong. It was.
Is it a shootout?
Well, first off, they were both shootouts. So the game on Saturday was 16-5 in favor of the OKC Certified Lions. Right. Ooh. So that game 16-5 over the New Mexico Runners. Yesterday's game, again, I just want to look at these scores because again, I don't want to say it wrong. It was 23-5. So over the course of 2 days, they scored 39 goals and allowed 10. Right. So to put things in perspective, right? And this is, I think, the question I have, right? We were talking about this question. It came up during the broadcast about should there be a mercy rule? And there was a fan, and she's like, it's a dog-eat-dog world. That's why they have first, second, third strings and all that stuff. Now, granted, at the highest of levels, the MLS, the Premier League, there should never be a conversation about mercy rules because, again, at these levels, the MLS, Premier League, MASL 1, the difference between the Savage and your bottom team at the very bottom of the table, there's not a significant difference in talent.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times when you're just not having success, it's team oriented, right? It's the philosophy's not working. There's maybe technically or sorry, the tactical things just not it's not right. There's a
Mm-hmm.
culture issue. We're not cohesive. There's a lot of reasons as to why a team might not have success, but a lot of it doesn't have to do with talent. If you're going
Mm-hmm.
to sit here and tell me that the LA Galaxy, whoever's currently sitting in first right now in the MLS, which right now it's Philadelphia, if you're telling me there's a difference between Philadelphia and Montreal as far as talent, like collective talent, I'm going to say no, right? There are teams that have superstars like Lionel Messi and Suarez on Miami, right? We know that. But is there a huge, significant talent gap between Philadelphia and Montreal? No. No, there's not. And granted, it's only 2 games into the season, so who are we to say otherwise? But
Right.
it's not, again, look at the NHL. Well, with the Detroit Pistons, right, and here locally, and the Red Wings, and
Right.
the Tigers. Are you telling me that these teams have significant talent gaps? No, just teams are performing at different levels.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but when we start talking about the talent gap between MASL2 teams, significant difference, right? Significant difference, right? MASL3, same thing. So in high school, there are mercy rules, especially in soccer. There's mercy rules. It's 8 goals. If you're up by 8 goals after 40 minutes, that game comes to it's over, right? In high school football and basketball, if you are up by big points, they just let the clock keep going. They don't stop the clock anymore, right? Football, if you're up by 20, I think it's 20 points or something like that. I think it's 3 scores. But if you're up by a significant, then they just don't stop the clock. There's no longer a clock stopping unless obviously there's injuries. The clock does stop on touchdowns, but like during the flow of play, there is no stoppages during possessions. So that lends the question is, should there be some kind of a mercy rule, right, in youth sports, right? I know that at the youth level, if you score a certain amount of points, they stop keeping score, right? They stop. That's not a mercy rule. That's just we're not going to count goals anymore, which, to be fair, that's actually straight up bullshit. Like,
Mm-hmm.
You're going to say it just doesn't count. So what does that mean then? That kid doesn't get credit for a goal? Like, I mean, how do you statistically manage that? Like, so we're just not going to keep, because the final score, the official score might be 10-0. So you scored 10 more goals. That means everyone who scored a goal after that 10 doesn't count anymore officially.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah.
seems like bullshit to me. I would call
Yeah.
bullshit on that.
Yeah.
But then, there's also leagues that don't even keep score, which to me is also bullshit. Right? So what is the solution to this? Because we've seen high school soccer teams who've scored 35 goals in a half. So, and then the game ends 35-0. And first off, that just seems, that seems crazy to me that you could score that many goals. Because again, mercy rule
Yeah.
is 8 after 40. So you have to score all those goals in the first half.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, yeah. And I still think there's a place for it at the youth sport level. The term is mercy, right? We are taking mercy on the other side. And the realization that because of the gap in talent, it's different when you talk about college and pro, because in one way or another, that is their job. And again, you have recruiting budgets, you have, coaching. It's a different level of play to where there is an expectation that you will be able to play the entire time. And they can't just not count stats too. It's a different game at the college level. Like, those stats matter. Even if they're garbage time stats, they still count for something because they affect everything else. They affect postseason stuff. They could affect playoffs, especially if you're talking about, a point system and you need a certain amount of goals or whatever, depending on how that looks, and recruiting at the same exact time too. When you talk about maybe that player moving on or going somewhere else, I mean, it's a lot like, what grades did you get? You can't, just leave certain things off of it and then leave certain things on, because that's going to end up affecting that person down the road. But at the youth level, I just don't know how much, when you get into that area of 25, 30, 30 plus goals, yeah, okay, you might get someone off the bench to score here, or you might get someone off the bench to do something here. But at what age are we really fighting for garbage time goals? At what age does that really make a difference? Like I said, in high school, that's different. When they just let the clock run and they just try to waste it all the way down, and you end up getting something within that time frame, then okay, I get it. But I don't think that necessarily affects the bottom line in recruiting or anything like that. But we've seen big blowouts like that. But I just at the youth sports level, and specifically in soccer, and we know, we've seen games where there's significant talent gaps, and unfortunately, you can't affect that very much, because sometimes there's just schools nearby each other that just one takes a lot of pride in a certain sport and they're very good at it, and the other just simply doesn't. They just don't have the firepower. So the thing that I'll say, JT, is you don't want to. It's a difficult line to toe, because you don't want to take an opportunity or a goal or a stat away from someone who gets it maybe in that garbage time, but at the same time, you don't want to absolutely obliterate the confidence and the willingness of that other team to even want to come out and play again. Because I've run into that situation before at the youth level where we would play a scrimmage, and or I'm trying to think of another situation. I know we've been mercied before, but similar situations like that, I think it's designed more for the kids who are losing the game than the kids who are winning the game. Now, ultimately, the convenience factor of it, especially for me, if I'm calling a game, is nice. I get out of there earlier, so that works out for me well. But the reason why that is because we want to keep kids playing athletics. Like, we don't want to shoo kids away from athletics because, oh my God, I went out and I just got like physically manhandled and embarrassed in front of everybody that I know, and there was no mercy. Like, they just kept doing it, kept coming back. So I think the reason why that rule exists, and again, this is just for me personally, is because I think they're trying to save at least some semblance of the confidence of those poor kids that are on the receiving end of this beatdown. Now, again, college or pro, I don't think there should be a mercy rule. In Arena League soccer is a little bit different, because it's not like traditional soccer at all. If you watch these games, in a lot of ways, it resembles hockey more than anything else, in the pace and how fast it happens. Sometimes bodies hit the ground a lot. They got a penalty box and everything. I mean, it's very much kind of like, if soccer and hockey were to just mix up and kind of create one product, that's what it would be. Now, they don't allow checking. I wish they would allow checking. That would be very entertaining. But outside of that, I mean, it's very much. It reminds me of when I was in middle school. We used to have this game on the playground. We called it Saki. And it was a mix of soccer and hockey. You were allowed to check the guy with the ball if he had it. So it kind of reminds me of that. You're playing balls off the wall and everything. So Arena League soccer can be a little bit different, because you'll get deflections, and before you know it, there's 3 goals in the back of the net. But these guys are pros, and you signed up for this. So it's a little bit different than, and you understand as an adult, because I can categorize, okay, even on a day-to-day basis, right? If I come into a day and all I'm doing is taking L's, like this video got 2 views, this game got canceled, this other thing happens, I'm wise enough to know that I come back tomorrow, it might be better. You know what I mean? I might have this opportunity that comes to me, and maybe this video does better. And so I can kind of categorize, even if I take a big L on a certain day, I'm like, I got tomorrow, I'll be okay. But to these kids, it's like a little bit of a different story. That one game where they get beat 79-0 might be enough for them to go, you know what, I'm not playing this sport anymore. I'm good. I think I've seen enough. We ran into the professionals in our area, the kids that train at this place or that place. So I think the mercy rule, for me, I think it does belong in the youth game. And again, it's for those kids. It's for the ones that, it's for little Johnny that doesn't really necessarily have a future in sports. But if little Johnny wasn't playing soccer, he would just be playing Xbox all day. So try to keep his confidence up.
Yeah, unpack that a little bit. I don't disagree with you. And I do believe that leagues, governing bodies, they look at um, outcomes in a lot of different ways. right? And trying to manage the world that we live in, without all the different nuances and challenges, and try to find that balance. I think a lot of it is based on pressure, right? Pressure to act,
Yeah.
pressure to not act, right? That really is, I mean, everything today is under a microscope, more so than it's ever been. And some leagues want to sit back and kind of wait, while others want to act and be on the forefront, and others, don't even care, right? Like I think you've got like those varying degrees, right? And I think if you're looking at like the league for what it is, let's start talking about the youth level in youth. When I say youth, let's look at, okay, so that like 5, 6, 7 year olds up to about 11 or 12, right? In that environment, goals really don't matter. Losses, they don't really matter, right? If we're talking about competitive environment versus non-competitive environment, I don't think the amount of goals or the amount of wins your team has really matters in a non-competitive environment.
Mm-hmm.
If it is a developmental type thing,
Mm-hmm.
then scoring and how many goals and all that kind of stuff, it's great in the sense of keeping, I guess, uh, the energy positive and whatever. But when you start getting into the competitive realm, where you're in a league environment, and it's about, because again, in most of these leagues, at the end of it, you have a chance to kind of you can promote yourself to the next league, right? In the highest levels in this country, MLS Next, ECNL, that is straight competition. I mean, you are
Mm-hmm.
fighting for national championships. You are fully engaged in that process. So if we're talking about it at the developmental level, then maybe it isn't maybe you don't call them games, you call them scrimmages, you call them friendlies, and there's not this competitive part of it. But in every league in America, and every there you play games, and you're playing
Yeah.
in a table where first, there's 8 teams in there, and you're competing for a league title. So if you're doing that, then you can't reduce scoring. You
No.
you you can't you can't do that. You can't say, well, after, no, because if goal differential is a thing in the standings, then you don't want to turn that off. Because again,
Yeah.
if you think about it from the standpoint of, if tiebreakers, if two teams are tied at the end of the season, well, how do you define how they win? Well, it's defined on how they win by head to head, how you play against your other teams. A lot of times it's, how your opponents, how they played against the common opponents, right? It's goal differential, how many goals you scored. So if you're capping it at 10 goals in a game, and then, there's 50 goals that are being scored after that moment, well, how can you be fair with that? So again, I don't know how these leagues are being managed, but tiebreakers are usually decided by goal differential. In most cases, it's goal differential first. It's
Yeah.
first, right?
Right.
And in tournaments, it might go to like, there might be things that go after that, but usually it's goal differential first. So if you're going to cap goal scoring, then that really negates equality and fairness and whatever you want to call it. In Again, if you're fighting in those league environments for first, second, third place, and if there's no playoffs, kids are going to get screwed because, and again, what are you teaching your child that they go out there in the field and all of a sudden goals go in the back and then they don't count anymore? Like, what is, because in life, you don't get to turn the clock off
No.
and stop
No.
counting.
Yeah.
It just doesn't seem like that's the right thing to do.
Yeah. Well, and if you're going to make the decision to be a part of this league, there should be an understanding that that's how it is, right? If you're talking about leagues, if you're talking about leagues where goal differential matters, and you're talking about leagues where a lot of these statistics actually kind of go into the factoring of who actually wins in certain, or who gets ranked where, or who gets to move on, or stuff like that. You are putting yourself in a position to where you understand that this is bigger than just, we're just kind of coming out here and having fun, right? There's a fine line between again, as you talked about, that non-competitive environment, in the hyper-competitive environment where we're almost trying to simulate what it would be like to play in a professional style league. So it's when we say youth, I think it's interesting because youth isn't just like a one size fits all. Like there are different types of youth sports. And I wouldn't say that, the ones that have a mercy rule are quote non-competitive, but if you're talking about a league that is again with the express purpose of player and team development, and again getting you to that point to where if you want to play at the college and professional level, you have to emulate that through your league, and you have to do everything that you can to closely try to mirror that, so that it's not just the level of play, because the truth is you're not going to learn how to play against that level of play until you get there. But you can learn how the process goes, how the leagues work, what it takes to go through what you need to go through, your body wise, preparing with your team, and you also get to feel early on what it's like to get blown out in a game. I mean, once you get to the college level, like there are still blowouts. There are still things that happen. Even at the pro level, we see it all the time. And so in one way or another,
especially and then there's one-off moments, right?
Yeah.
Where every team could have an unbelievable off night where just everything
Yeah.
kind of falls apart.
Right.
The thing that I think that when we talk about this too is if you look at the high school game, high school, not youth, high school. At the youth level, for the most part, you start talking about in the club environment, there's every club is going to have different levels within the club, right? But you start talking about like this team over here, this club over here, those teams, those players are coming into an environment where they in most cases they probably want to be there, or their parents want them to be there, right? They are kind of taking, I say, a proactive approach in the club environment. In the youth environment, it's more about fun, right? You start talking about what is the goal of these things. If you talk about recreational city organized leagues, well, those are designed to just be active and be fun. There might be some players in there that are all like, yeah, I want to go out there and, kill and have fun. And that doesn't mean like we're talking about killing, we're just saying go out there and have that killer mentality on the field. Right. And I don't think it's important. I got to quantify, clarify that just so that I'm not like, but in the club environment, you're entering into a competitive world. You're talking about development. You're talking about growing, talking about being challenged, so in that environment, you are trying everything you can to really raise the bar, right? The competitiveness in that environment is significantly different than that of your recreational environment.
Right.
And then there's the next level from that at the youth, which is, you're super ultra competitive, and your next level, right? Your MLS Next is your ECNL, it's your boys academy, like all these things that really kind of raise the bar. And it's different there. If you just go to club soccer, Nationals, whatever, or Michigan Wolves, whatever, or Michigan Jaguars, you might be playing in MSYSA, green or blue. You might be playing in, and there's a number of different leagues you can play in MSPSP. There's so many different things. So not all of them are created equal. So if you're going to be playing in these different environments, going into it, you know what you're walking into. And there are MLS Next teams that beat teams up 6, 7, 8, 9, nothing. And again, these are the best teams in the country, right? So even in those scenarios, there are still teams that are going to be better, right, than others significantly because of where maybe the talent is. And there might be a certain age group where these kids all kind of came out of, and now here they are. So there's a number of things that go into all that. I think it's important that we don't lose sight of what the different levels are all about.
Yeah.
Yeah. To be fair, I'm okay if leagues at the recreational level around this country want to, on some level, not cap scoring, but get creative with this aspect of it. Because what is the goal of the league? The goal of the league is to have it's positive, it's fun. There's maybe some toughness in there, but it's not this overwhelming competitive environment,
right,
that is designed to come out and really to really develop the next unbelievable soccer player in this country. That's what they're there for.
Yeah.
So I think understanding what you're going into. The problem is the parent. It's not the players. is mom and dad are like, well, maybe mom and dad don't have the money to put their kid in clubs, so they keep putting them in rec. And their kid's really good, and they go out there and they run up and down the field like the best. And there's players out there that are extremely good that will never play at the club level, and they'll just run north and south, and they'll just score 10 goals a game. And their player will get tackled and kicked, and mom and dad will get pissed, as they should, because the referee's not taking care of it, right? Because it's and it just kind of boils over, right?
Right.
And so in that environment where, you still have teams that are playing at 14, 15 years old in these local rec leagues, and they play for 8 games. Should you cap those games? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, again, I feel like in soccer you don't stop the clock, right? Unless it's an indoor environment. So there's no way to really stop the bleeding.
Right.
Game comes to an end. Which again, at the inexperienced recreational level where you don't know all the nuances of soccer, you're not the most intelligent soccer player, right? Not saying you're not an intelligent, student or I'm just saying from a educational intelligence standpoint, this player is not going to be the quote unquote like student of the game of soccer. They aren't going to have that knowledge. So at that level, does it matter, how you, it does matter. So I feel like you could probably have mercy rules at that level because these players don't know. They don't know how to handle these moments. And so now you're going to have players pass the ball around, right, and not try and score goals in that environment. Yeah. Probably not, because they don't have that tactical and technical ability to really manage that properly. At the MLS Next level, you can, okay, we're going to go ahead and tone it down a little bit. We're going to do 12 passes before we put a cross in. You can score a goal off a header. Like that could be a thing that coaches would do. But at the recreational level, you can't do that. Mm-mm. I'm not saying you can't, but in most cases, it's not going to be something that's going to be well received or maybe even well understood. And then more importantly, can it even be put in place and actually be a result? And I don't think it can be consistently. So at that level, I think mercy rules would make the most sense. You don't you just say, hey, and I think in softball, it's like 10 runs after 6 or something. There's like a thing where it's like these runs that you score, game's over if you have scored, you're down by 10 after 4 innings. And then if you're down by 8 after 5, if you're down by 8 after 6, game's over, that kind of a thing.
Right.
You probably need to instill that in these leagues. Don't cap scoring. That seems dumb to me. But mercy rules seem to make the most sense at that recreational level.
Right.
Where, I think trying to pull that off is harder to do.
And development, listen, development is not just physical, right? Like everyone thinks when we talk about player development, they're like, oh yeah, okay, getting bigger, stronger, faster, doing the cone drills, doing all that other stuff. Well, yeah, that's part of it. Yeah, sure, that's certainly part of it. That's not all of it though. The other biggest part of player development is the mental side too. And part of that is not just the good stuff. And I think, when we talk about creating tough players and, I don't know if you got a chance to see that Rick Pitino halftime speech that he gave St. John's. It's kind of floating around on the internet. They ended up winning their conference championship game, but it was a really impassioned speech. It was during halftime and he was ripping into him. And a part of it, was, the mental toughness side of things that sometimes kids are lacking a lot. One easy way of teaching, how to be mentally tough and fight through adversity is how do you respond to getting obliterated, to getting embarrassed? Like that is a huge part of player development. So it's not just the mental side. It's not just the physical side, right? Bigger, stronger, faster. How do you pass? How do you shoot? All this other stuff. It's also the mental side. How do you deal with that level of adversity? I know we're kind of crossing over sports again, but I was doing a basketball game, a semifinal game, a couple of days ago, and the conference player of the year in our conference scored 3 points in that game, and they lost by 33. 3 points, and I think it was in like the last 10 minutes, and we were up by 30 plus with 10 minutes to go. If they were to just call that a mercy game, okay, well, yeah, they would save them from the embarrassment of having to play out the rest of that stretch. But what would that teach any of those other guys? I mean, would it help them, kind of spur them to come back better and stronger next year? Because all of them are coming back from a year from now. I mean, that's the part to me is like you have to take the good with the bad, and part of player development is learning how to get through the bad, and even in my position too. I mean, the first game I ever produced on the radio was 3 hours of hell because I stumbled my way through that entire thing, but I wasn't able to just kind of dip out an hour into it and have someone else do it because that was my job. And I had to learn how to fail and fail bad initially in order to come back and be better. Peter says at the young age to learn how to lose humbly and builds character with even big blowouts. Yeah, it's perspective. And it's teaching the kids, because those are the lessons. I feel like those are the games where you learn the most. And maybe I'm wrong as a coach, JT. Maybe you can speak to this. You don't learn the most through the game that you go out and you score 3 goals and you run through someone. You learn the most in the game where you get punched in the mouth, right? And you realize, okay, we have to get to that level of play. Wherever we were before is not good enough to compete.
Yeah, but
team.
We talk about this losing humbly, right, and winning and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so it goes to both ways, right? So you don't learn anything from a 5-0 win, but you don't lose anything by losing 5-0 either, right? There's nothing to be what are you gaining? I mean, and again, different. If you're talking about being down 2-0 with 5 minutes to go, and then you push everyone forward and you lose by, at that point, whether you lose 2-0 or 12-0 doesn't matter. All right. But if you're telling me you get from the moment the game starts, it's 5-0 at halftime, you got blown out. Right. So what are you learning at that point? Now, granted, at the higher levels, you learn a ton. But at the lower level, what is a 5-0, 8-0, 12-0 loss? What does that teach you? We can look at it at both sides of the coin. On the winning side, what have you learned? You can learn you can roll another team. Now, granted, how you, after each goal you scored, from like goal 5 and on, how are you celebrating? Right? This is what we're talking about. Winning with humility, winning with pride, winning without being, these jackasses or whatever you want to call it. Like, you're not like going to go out and like take your shirt off on the 7th goal. Right? However, let's look at this from the standpoint too. When you start talking about winning 6, 7, 8-0, who's on the team? Who's on the field? Right? Who's on the field? Chances are it's now your backups, your depth chart, whoever who doesn't normally get a lot of minutes. Now they're out there on the field. So when they score, this will be the first goal they've ever scored in the history of their life. My light just went out. That was weird. So on its own, what is that? What does that look like? So now this person's the first goal they've ever scored. Right. So they're going to celebrate that way. Now that might be completely disrespectful to the other team. You know what I mean? However, if they know that, you know what I mean? Right. That might make a difference. Right. What if you pull your goalie out and put him on the field? There are many times where, as a goalkeeper, I never got to play on the field because we were in close games. But there were games where we were beating teams 6-0, and they're like, pull me out, put me on the field so I can go try and score a goal. And I would go out there and try and score. And if I scored a goal, I'd be like, holy crap, look at me. I just scored a goal. Right. So there are things, there's something to be said about that.
Yeah.
But again, and Peter's going to hop back in here. He's going to comment. He goes, but with every game you lose with a smaller margin means you're learning to play the game better. That's not always the case, though. That's making an assumption that every team you play against isn't going to beat you up. But if you're losing by 8 or 9 goals on a consistent basis, all you're learning to lose is by a lot of goals. And there are teams out there that get mercied in every game. I can tell you that because when I was coaching at Franco Jewish Academy here in Michigan, we would get smoked in every game. We were losing. We got mercied a bunch of games. And it wasn't because they had a bad coach. It wasn't because, and maybe they did. I mean, they had a bad coach. They had a bad coach. But it wasn't because of that. It was because the teams, that our makeup of players, we had 11 total players. So we didn't have 25 kids to choose from. We didn't have a JV program. We had just one varsity team. We had 11 players, maybe 13. 11 would show up, and their soccer awareness was that of probably an entry-level player walking into a soccer environment for the first time. They were not aware of the game in which me and you or any other player for that matter would be aware at a high level. So you're going to go out and you're going to get smoked every game. So for them, and to be clear, they didn't care. It didn't matter to them. They knew they were getting their butts kicked, but they went out there, they gave it as best they could, and they had some fun. Yeah, it was tough. It was tough as a coach losing by 8 goals every game. But but I don't know if there are teams like that. Maybe not as far and few between, but chances are there's a lot more teams out there who are getting rolled every single game, and they're not losing anything. They're not learning anything from those losses because there's nothing for them to learn.
Right.
Now there are games where you're going to lose 6-0 because you just lost to a way better team, and then maybe in another environment you're more competitive. You might learn something from those losses, but I don't know if you're getting smoked every game. You're gonna learn from it.
No.
Even a loss is a win by having the bench players game time, keeps them hungry and might find a diamond in the rough. Yeah. Again, if you're getting smoked, chances are your coach, you're going to start putting players in as well, and who are, but then that might also make it worse.
Yeah.
Right. If your best players are getting smoked, then your worst players are going to make it worse.
Right.
So there's going to be that to go with it. Again, it depends on the level. I will continue to say that it depends on the level in which we're talking about
and what you're looking to get out of it too.
Competitive levels in this country, then losing by a lot isn't going to matter. But in these recreational levels, I think it does matter. And I don't know what the answer to it is, but I do think mercy rules need to be applied at these recreational levels where these kids just don't know what they don't know, and it's hard to, I think, really treat the game the right way.
Yeah, they don't know what they don't know, and high school sports are interesting because there are some schools where the ship is run like it's the real deal. The ship is run like it's a full on, we got some some aircraft carriers out there. And then we have some schools whose, ships are reminiscent of a canoe, and they just have kids that all they want to do is just compete. They want to be healthy. They want to play a sport as opposed to, again, playing video games all day, every day, and they want to be around their friends, right? So when your expectation is that's what I want to get out of it, okay, all right, fine. Like I don't think anyone's going to lose any sleep as long as the players themselves aren't losing sleep over not winning games and getting blown out, so long as that's their expectation, right? I want to run around. I want to keep my heart and my lungs healthy. I want to be around my friends, right? I want to do something productive with my time after school that doesn't involve getting into mayhem and, go being a delinquent. I'm going to go play sports. And so to me, that's the whole thing is like, I will always promote kids playing sports. Middle school, high school, doesn't matter what level. I don't care what your skill level is. I don't care who you are. Now, again, that doesn't fly at every school, right? I think about like Rockford High School over here on the west side of the state. Like, you don't go into a sport willy-nilly at Rockford. You know what I mean? Like, the kids who play sports there are the types that, like, they play all year round. You know what I mean? If they play baseball, they play all year round. If they play football, they're training all year round. That's a little bit different, right? But Rockford is also, they have this thing about them that like, oh, we're Rockford, we're up here and everybody else is down here. But that's not the same at every single school. And there's a lot of schools out there that, again, even if you haven't even played before, it's like, to me, it's the game of rugby too. I think about that. Like, we had it at the club level. Peter says, if you're not a student of the game, if you don't learn something of the loss. Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Not all of them are students of the game. Some of them, especially at the level that, again, the non-competitive lower levels, not all of them are students of the game.
I think it's important I keep saying this. And Peter, I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you. I agree with you when it comes to, men's amateur, the highest level of competition at the youth level that you can possibly have. But if we're talking about growing the game of soccer, if we're talking about soccer in this country, and while club soccer is a huge, huge proponent of that, there are a bunch of players who are playing right now in non-competitive in leagues across the country in recreational kind of games where they're just out there to have fun. They just want to kick a ball around. They want to do with their buddies, as Nathan alluded to here a moment ago. And they don't care about winning or losing. I mean, no one wants to lose. And I think everyone wants to win. But they're not like going to lose sleep over it. Like, I would lose sleep over losing soccer games. Yeah. They're not going to lose. They're going to go to the game. They're going to kick the ball around. Maybe good, maybe bad, maybe somewhere in between. After that, they're going to run to Dairy Queen with all their buddies and grab a Dairy Queen. Like that's what's going to happen.
Yep.
Like that's the level we're talking about here from, U5 to U16, U17 in recreation land across America. It's just like Joey Tribbiani goes, the quotes, right? In rec land around this country, winning and losing doesn't matter. As the overall underlying theme, right? Again, there are some nuances to that, and there are some things that make that maybe not true in certain areas, right? Does not make sense, or it does make sense depending upon the league. But at the end of the day, we want those players who are playing in those leagues to still be fans of the game when they're not playing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if you are a player who's getting your ass kicked every game and you're losing by 30 goals, because that can happen in these leagues, are you still going to go watch those games at the bar on Saturdays and MLS land on a Saturday night when you're 22 years old? Or have you lost love for it? Or you come across a coach who's so hooked on winning that every game you go out there, he's yelling and screaming at the top of his lungs, and parents are throwing chairs onto the field because they're unhappy with the referee call or whatever. Is that what we want? Yeah. Right now, it's the same thing can happen in the club environment. But if you're talking about the highest levels, those players are, in most cases, committed to the process. They understand what's at stake. And you're going to lose 20 or 30% of them, and they're not going to play soccer ever again, 40%. But those players that keep going down the way, they're engulfed in soccer, right? Yeah. And I think the likelihood of them sticking around a little longer is probably more likely.
Yeah.
But again, I get what you're saying, Peter. I just think that at the recreational level in this country, winning is not the theme. Right. It's fun. It's
fun.
Let's go have that pool party.
Yeah.
Like, watch the movie Kicking and Screaming.
Yep.
Right. To be fair, that was a recreational league. That was your city league.
Yeah. What post-school activity do we provide for kids so that they don't go out on the street and, steal some candy from this store, or just do some, I don't know, whatever high school kids do. I don't know, whatever they do nowadays. It's been a while since I've been a high schooler. So name it, whatever the delinquent stuff they get into now, they're not doing that. They are playing sports. And so that is, in my mind, I think JT's correct. It's about having fun. It's about team camaraderie. I think about it like the lower levels in high school. Like, if you're not on the varsity team, like, no one really cares all that much about the freshman team. Not to say that they don't, but you're not exactly always caught up in wins and losses. It's about camaraderie and team and building towards a common goal, which will be the varsity level. So again, it's all about expectations. And if you're paying X amount to be in a league and you get blown out and you don't want to play soccer anymore, well, you may as well figure it out now. You may as well figure it out now.
Example. I took over when I was club coaching. I took over a team that was a recreational team that was having a lot of success, and that entire team went to a club and became a club team. And when I took them over, they were dead last in their league in club, right? Because they came up and they were beating everybody up in the recreational environment, but now in the club environment, they're getting beat themselves. I took that team over, and in just a year, we were able to go from the bottom of the table. And we finished second in the table, right? So in less than a year, with better coaching and a better organized thing, understanding what your players you had, we were able to go from last to second in the course of just a season. Unheard of in this environment, right? So, but the parents were still not happy. They wanted to be first. They were still not happy with that environment. So it just goes to show you that these things can have an impact. And if winning is the goal, then go out and win. But if it's just to have fun, then who cares what the score is? And that's why I'm saying you don't stop scoring. You just make it a mercy. And, you say, hey, at halftime, if the game is up by 10, game's over with, and you go from there. That'll wrap up here, episode number 39 here on Inside the Game. I want to thank you for stopping by here on this Monday. We'll be back at us again tomorrow, same time, same place, right here on the National Soccer Network. For Nathan Wangler, I'm Jonathan Turner. Subscribe, like us, share us with your frenemies and your friends, and we'll see you next time on Inside the Game.
Peace.
This has been a presentation of the National Soccer Network. I got to run in.